All right. Well, I thought I haven't given an update for a while on my ketogenic experience. I am now just over 16 months into the process. And I recently had a physical with my doctor. My doctor who was going to fire me. And now she's done a little reading on the lean mass hyperresponders. She was not really shook about my continued high LDL. It's like 344. What was my most recent? 343 LDL. So that's still pretty significant. And then, 463 total cholesterol. And she just really didn't respond to that. She understands where I am at with that. And my A1C was recently 5.9. It was 5.6 again. And I came into the office with a glucose monitor on because I was kind of with that higher A1C, and with some of the recent publications in the mainstream about, red meat causing type 2 diabetes. This is ridiculous, in my humble opinion. But, the A1C, my red blood cells are likely living longer. And I had a reticulocyte count taken. A reticulocyte is your young red blood cells. So if that count is lower, which mine was like 1.2, then that means you're producing less of those, which translates into, your red blood cells are living longer than this prescribed 90 to 120 days. So the A1C is a formula, it's an equation that arrives at that 3-month average, 5.9 or 5.6. So I'm down to 5.6 again, which is, just under the pre-diabetic line. But even that 5.6 might be artificially high. It might be actually like 5.2 or something like that. Because my blood glucose with the monitor, my average is 103. So my fasting blood glucose, when I go in, this last time it was 99. The last time my blood glucose, it was 102. My fasting blood glucose was 102. Well, that seems high. That's, 99 is the top of the range. 102 is high. It's into the red, right? And yet my average is 103 over a 10-day period of time. And interestingly, the glucose monitor is running on average higher than like a finger prick. So if I were to calibrate my glucose monitor with a finger prick and look at the real time, my glucose monitor would be incrementally higher than the actual blood measurement that came out of my finger. And so that 103 average might actually be like a 95 average or something. Like my glucose is flat. And I just ran an experiment today. I was a sourdough baker, right? Before I became, keto, gluten, right? Now, fermented gluten is better than straight up gluten. I just heard about a double fermentation process that totally eliminates the gluten. My sourdough would still technically have some gluten in it, although people that have gluten sensitivities can eat real sourdough that was actually fermented. And I try to ferment mine as long as I can without overproofing it, to try to get as much of the gluten broken down as possible. And so at any rate, I've got, other ingredients in there. I've got pecans in there. I've got cranberries, dried cranberries in there, which technically have added sugar, And I've got, what else do I have in there? Sunflower seeds, maybe. At any rate, maybe it was wild rice, had wild rice in there. And so a few other ingredients. It's about, 100 grams of bread by weight would be 49 grams of carbohydrates. So I had a 74 gram piece. So I'm thinking about 37, 36 grams of carbohydrates in that. I try to stay under 50 carbohydrates if I'm doing any carbs at all. And at the encouragement of my doctor, I've added a few berries, here and there. I mix the berries with my fermented dairy. So yogurt, real yogurt, unsweetened, and kefir. And I've developed a taste for those. And so I add a few blackberries in there, a few strawberries, or maybe blueberries, and which hardly have any glycemic value, so that's pretty benign, and you're eating it with the protein. So whether I smoothie it or just eat the chunks in there, it doesn't even affect my blood sugar. My blood sugar went down when I had blueberries and kefir. So go figure. Didn't even go up. Now, the 74 grams by weight of sourdough, which was 34 grams of carbohydrates, or 36 grams of carbohydrate, I ate that at 10:30 this morning. And at 10:55, my blood glucose spiked to 149. So, and I had just eaten like a half pound of hamburger and 6 eggs. Okay, just ate that. Then I had two blackberries and some yogurt. So that was virtually nothing, mostly protein. And then I had this 36 grams of carbohydrate in the form of sourdough bread. And it's real sourdough, fermented. And so I spiked to 149, then it started dropping. And by 10:20, I ate the bread and my glucose was 113. It was 10:20 and my blood glucose was back down to 113. So it spiked to 149, still within range, right? Still within range. And my insulin was already responding. And sometimes on a ketogenic diet, your insulin is slow to respond on your first, introduction of carbs. Now, this wasn't technically my first introduction of carbs. I do some, 5%, 10% carbs on a regular basis. I drink my coffee. There's carbohydrates in coffee, believe it or not, about 3. And then I have some berries. So over the last few days, I've been having some berries here and there. But my insulin was very responsive within 30 minutes. And within 50 minutes, my glucose was back to where it was. And in an hour, a full hour, I was at 103 glucose. So I was 10 points lower than when I ate the bread in actually 55 minutes. So I'm very pleased with my insulin response, both in the timing of the response and the effectiveness of the response. I mean, it was a drop. It dropped as fast or faster and further than when before I ate the bread. So that's interesting. So now I know, for me, if I eat all my protein first and I have one slice of sourdough bread, it's a half a slice. It's kind of a round loaf, and I cut the loaf in half, and then I cut that in half, and I take slices of that half loaf, and so 50 to 75 grams per piece is usually what I have. So 25 to 37 carbs of that bread smothered with butter. And now I know that it's really not a spike. Like I'm not going into the 200s. It's like 149. That is a very good response. And so a glucose monitor, now that you can get them even without a prescription, mine I've had for a little while here. Dr. Boz got me into it. But, so I have the G7, and the same company makes the over-the-counter one, which is a little different. It's not quite as elaborate. You can't calibrate it. I didn't calibrate mine anyways. I just my daughter's type 1 diabetic, so I went to her house and pricked my finger, and I just saw, okay, so at any given time, my glucose is X number of points lower than what the meter says, and so I can just know, I'm just monitoring the influx of my sugar. I don't need the exact number, and I'm always in range. It's super flat. It hardly fluctuates. And even here, I would say this was an extreme test, 70 or 36 grams of carbohydrate. It's not quite a glucose tolerance test of, I don't know how many grams of carbohydrate they throw you, 150 or something like that. But within an hour, I'm back to normal. So even if I, ate that piece of bread and then went and did all my calisthenics, I'd probably burn that up. It'd come right back down. So anyways, there could be ways to incorporate those carbohydrates and have them not affect my ketogenic state whatsoever. So that's pretty cool. And then, so a couple good takeaways from my doctor's appointment. She agreed with me testing my insulin. A lot of these general practitioners, they don't test insulin. So I don't know if my propensity to check insulin has her thinking more about checking insulin. We'll see, because she ordered labs for my wife, Lisa. We always go in together. And I have an account at LabCorp, and I go through ownyourlabs.com. And being in a ketogenic state, Own Your Labs is tracking. So they're building a database of ketogenic people, and getting, one day they're going to be able to correlate numbers and get their own. Well, with ketogenic people, these are probably the norms, so the A1C could be different for ketogenic people versus carb eating people. So I'm kind of into that vision, and I want to see Dave Feldman, develop that into a database. So I participate with Own Your Labs, but Lisa is not ketogenic, so we'll see if the doctor ordered insulin for her, because I would like to see her insulin. And if she doesn't get it checked this time, we'll get it checked next time for sure. But she doesn't do much more than 100 carbs a day. So she's pretty low carb just because she's real disciplined. She's 110 pounds, 112 pounds, might gust to 114, so, she's small, petite woman anyways. But yeah, so I'm thoroughly enjoying this lifestyle. It's very conducive to being an arborist. I don't have to eat lunch. I can eat heavy in the morning and know that I'm going to go all day. I can even work on a fasting day. Thursdays are always my fasting day. And I can go work a job and not eat till supper. And I'm fine. As long as I'm drinking electrolytes and water, I'm good to go. So it really fits my lifestyle. I'm not religious about it. I'll try somebody's cake at their birthday if I think it looks good. I'll eat my cacao, my 90% cocoa, and drink my full fat cream with it. That's my dessert. That's my treat. 90% cocoa and full fat cream. A little quarter cup of full fat cream. You eat that cocoa, drink a little cream. Oh, that's bliss. Anyways, Game of Trees. This is the Ageless Arborist. We're having fun, and just wanted to give a report of how I'm doing after 16 months of carnivore, dirty carnivore. 10% carbohydrates, 90% animal products. That's basically what I do, and I aim for 70% fat calories, 25% protein calories, and 5% carbohydrates. And we're having fun. We'll see you next time.